The F5 Local Traffic Manager. This is going to be the beginning of our course, the beginning of a wonderful new relationship that you and I are going to have with some application delivery controllers and some really cool ways to kind of enhance the user's experience for those wonderful applications that we have running throughout our network. So F5 application delivery controllers, and more specifically my local traffic manager. What is it? Where can I get it? What all's involved in doing things? I guess like everything, it depends on how much you want to get into it and how much you want to get out of it for that matter, and what it is that you're trying to do. Are you looking at this from a certification standpoint? Are you looking at this from, I have one in my network, or we're going to get one in my network, and I need to know something about it? Either way you go, we're trying to have you covered. Right? We want to cover a lot of the details, a lot of the concepts, a lot of the configuration stuff to it in order to get the most out of your application delivery controllers. Because, of course, you want to get the most out of your applications. That's what it's all about. Well, maybe it's the hokey pokey. What if that was what it's all about? Anyway, whichever way we're going to go down with this. Okay? So when we start looking at these things in here and kind of going through and finding where we're going to be at, we first have to decide how we're going to approach things. And from that standpoint, it's probably good to know about the basics for stuff. Now, from an F5 point of view, there are certifications to go along with it. Okay? Our starting point actually is the F5 Big IP Administrator. Now, interestingly enough, the administrator exam is my starting point for everything. Now, that covers not just the LTM from an introductory standpoint, but things like the GTM, the ASM, a whole bunch of other things that go in there, which are different modules or different methods of using my devices. And we'll learn about this as we go through the nuggets, so don't get hung up by writing all this down and going, oh my god, I got no idea what he's talking about. Perfectly fine. Sometimes I feel that way too. But beyond that point, we're going to kind of go through and figure all these things out, you and I together. Kind of sit down, kind of work through the stuff. It's all great. When we look at this from an examination standpoint, we have a 101 exam. And honestly, that's really the extent of what it's called, so there's nothing else more fun in there. But what this is Application Delivery Fundamentals. And it really kind of tests your knowledge about exactly what an ADC is and what kinds of things that it can do and what kinds of other modules happen to come with it, and a little bit of stuff about networking. So we want to make sure that we understand at least some concepts of basic networking, because really what we're doing in here is from an app point of view, trying to get things together where the users can talk to one or more of these servers as we go, one or more of the applications that we have, and balance them and have the best experience ever. All that fun stuff. All about the app. Alright? So when we start going through these things, know about your fundamentals is what we're going to boil down to, and we'll cover a lot of that throughout this series. Okay, so lots of good things coming up. The other exam, because you have to do 2 exams before you get this initial certification here, is the 201 exam. Okay, and that is TMOS administration. Now, TMOS is the Traffic Management Operating System. So that's basically the guts and glory and brains of what's going on top of your ADC. And so we're going to go into a lot of things from a maintenance point of view, from a troubleshooting point of view, from a how do things work point of view that we really need to get into on here. Now, I really kind of have, one of those quandaries, I guess, of how we look at things, because I know a lot of people approach certifications differently. And interestingly enough, it's kind of like we have to be familiar with how F5 is approaching certifications. And honestly, I like it because it kind of goes along with my own point of view. So a certification is not an endpoint. All right? So you don't study for it just to have it and then you're done. You should be looking at a certification, the exams in particular, as a way of testing things that you know. Not learning things to take a test, but testing things that you know. If you truly know something, it will come naturally. You will have it, pretty much in your head. Obviously, we all have to fill in some details here and there, but kind of gives you a good starting point or a good fundamental level for how to think about this stuff. And F5 really does that same thing. In here, the emphasis is going to be on understanding how the box thinks, or how an administrator would think if you're doing this in a real world. So hopefully we have some experience in doing these things in the real world. If not, there's always software that we can get to do it. I would highly suggest, especially for use in the lab right here, that we all go to www.f5.com/trial. Alright, we can get a free 30-day license of the virtual machine. Okay, put it on your workstation, put it on your Fusion if you got a Mac, put it on your ESXi if you want to keep it in the middle of your lab, put it wherever you're going to put it. But it's a virtual machine, free license for you to be able to play around with this stuff. Alright? And that's the best way that we're going to learn about it. If you have one of these in production, or more than one of these in production, that's good too. Might want to start out with read-only stuff so we don't upset anybody. But, it's all good to see what's going on, to be able to experience what's actually happening in there. Now, and we'll probably see a whole lot more of these ADCs coming about. Okay, I mean, F5's been leading the way for a long time, but more importantly, they have some really good, strong partnerships with some of our leading network vendors, like Cisco Systems. So there's going to be a lot of push for doing this, especially because Cisco's no longer in that market. So a lot of things that we will see, that we'll start to see more and more of this type of thing going on, concentrating on the, what we call, I guess, the UE, or the user experience, and how to make things better for the user. So anyway, back in terms of my certifications. When we start looking at these exams, each one is going to be 90 minutes in length. And right now, each one costs $135. That may change, of course. It may also vary depending on where you're at taking the test. But things to keep in mind for it. As we move forward, this is going to be up to 80 questions. This already is 80 questions. All right. Now, 80 questions in 90 minutes. That's kind of a tight window for doing things, which is why I emphasize on the part of getting some software, playing around with it, because there is no way that you're going to be able to do this just from reading a few things, just from going in and, yes, watch my videos over and over. That's wonderful. But I'd be really impressed if somebody could actually pull off passing the exams just by doing that and not actually touching it themselves. It's a whole different world to know that I can do something, as opposed to just, the memorization and seeing it and learning it, or, trying to remember all the stuff that goes with it. A lot of nuances in there, different from doing it yourself. So definitely stress playing around with things as you go, because, 80 questions, 90 minutes, that is going to be a hard time to do things. Now, other interesting, I guess, trivial facts about these exams. Passing score is 69%. Doesn't seem very high, and yet, amazingly, it's not real hard or not real easy to pass these exams. So there is work involved in doing that, which means that questions are pretty tough. The other thing with it is 10 of these questions don't count. Now, you're not going to know which 10, because that would just take the fun out of it. Okay? But 10 of the questions are in there as kind of a testing sort of procedure, trying to figure out new questions, gaining psychometrics, which is statistics from how people do on the new questions and things along those lines, but they won't be counted against your score. So really, you've got to get 69% out of 70 questions in order to actually pass each of those exams. Now, some more hard parts. Yeah, but wait, there's more. When you take these exams, when you either pass or fail, honestly, it doesn't matter which one you happen to do, you do not get a score report like you do with other vendors. Okay, there are blueprints, and we can go take a look at, the F5 website, and go click on Education, and then click on Certification. Okay, and that will lead us into blueprints. So I would strongly suggest looking at the blueprints for each of these 2 exams, possibly using that as your guideline for studying or guideline for taking notes anyway, and seeing what you got going on. All right? So that's going to be one piece of it, is to kind of follow along those lines in there. But as we kind of go through and do this, there's no score report at the end that says out of, the grouping for category number 1, you got 80%, you got category number 2, you got 40%, category number 3, whatever. The bottom line for that is if you don't pass the exam, you really don't have any guideline of what you need to study. It's all based on what you looked at for the questions, what you believe you either knew or didn't know. It kind of goes back to, like I said, you got to know this stuff to take the exams, and kind of reacting from that point of view. Doesn't make it easy. Honestly, it makes it kind of irritating. When we do this, now the other part as far as how we go about doing this is all through VUE, by the way. All my testing centers through VUE, but it is through the VUE professional centers. That is an important distinction, which means you can't go to Billy Bob's computer shop that happens to be a VUE testing center and take these exams. There is extra security involved. They do things like palm prints and other cool stuff like that. And they like videotape everybody kind of thing. It's the same professional centers where they do a lot of the medical exams and attorney bar exams and stuff along those lines, FAA exams, other things like that. It's a whole different ballgame. You may also not have one conveniently located to you. For me, I only have one in the town where I live in, and it's like 20 miles away. So not nearly as easy as the place that I usually go take tests. Not nearly as laid back either. So I guess good things. Maintaining the security of the exam, always a wonderful part, reducing people cheating, all that jazz that goes with it. Great things to understand, but also adds to some people's stress about things. So keep that in mind, know it going forward as far as how the whole procedure is going to work. When you first sign up, okay, so going in here into the certification portion, sign up for an education ID. Basically a unique identifier for you. Once you get that, you will then go sign up on VUE and you can take your tests and everything. But more importantly, you will get an invitation in email to take the first exam. After that, you have to pass this one, then you'll get an invitation to take this exam. You can't even schedule the 201 until you get that invitation. That means after passing the 101. So again, just kind of a difference in procedure for how things happen to work in here. Now, when I went through and took the exams, okay, the 101 wasn't that bad. Going through the information, nice thing was it had been mostly when I was done with completing the course, so I knew what kinds of stuff I had talked about already and what kinds of things were on the blueprint for that matter, and had a pretty good idea of where we're going. And I got a very decent score on it too. So quite happy about that, and didn't have to go back and redo a lot of things in the course. So again, fairly happy about that. And again, passed. It wasn't until after that I received the invitation for the second exam. So now I have to go about finding time in my schedule, and when they have availability, to actually sit down and do the second exam, the TMOS administration. That may be a little bit harder, I guess I'm anticipating it from a, not just experience point of view, but from real-world scenarios. And so we'll kind of see where that goes. I don't have much of an opinion on it at this point in time, but we'll cover the bases. If things need to be added, changed, removed, whatever we have to do, definitely we'll cover these things on here. So, from your point of view, good stuff to be learning, good stuff to be thinking about. From a testing procedure, don't make this your goal. Make it a checklist, always a good thing, but don't make it the end point of where you're going to be. Now, even after we do this, okay, so this is just the F5 Big IP Administrator. There are specialist exams after that. And again, if you want to, you don't never have to do anything. This is a certification, which requires 2 exams. You also have an LTM specialist, and there are actually 2 different specialists. So 2 completely separate things as far as exams and the specialist certifications. So 301A and 301B. Right? And again, from an invitation standpoint, like I can't go take these, even though I really want to, until I go through and take the 201 exam and pass it. I won't even see it as an option to sign up for. So 301A is an LTM specialist on the architecture, setup, and deployment. Whereas 301B is on the maintenance, so maintain and troubleshoot. You know, although I do kind of look at this and say, well, this would be a really good way to study for this one, but, you know, whatever. I guess it goes the other way around. Maybe 201 is a good way to study for that one. Okay. But this is kind of the whole idea as far as where we're getting, or what to expect anyway, from certification exams that come with this. F5, again, going to be in your network regardless of whether you get a certification out of it. This can be a very valuable course for knowing how to do your local traffic management and be able to deploy these and work with your applications and use them in your network. Now, what I cover in the course is really going to be, I guess, a good outline for how we actually set things up. Okay, I mean, we're going to cover all the details as far as our virtual servers go, you know, which does end up having many pieces as far as things like, you know, profiles and all that jazz. We'll get into things about how traffic is managed through the device, through my NAT and my SNAT. Everything that we can do in terms of how this device thinks or how it moves traffic back and forth, any of the multiple things that go on with stuff like persistence and iRules, and other stuff that can really become the pieces of how we deal with things. We'll also go into HA, or high availability deployments. How to go ahead and do this and add a second box in here to best support my users. Have no single point of failure anyplace. So all the cool things that we do. What pools and pool members. All the stuff that we will see on like a day in and day out basis, we happen to cover through nuggets in this course. So as we go through here, we're going to take it from the idea of you want to deploy one of these and better serve your users. So how are we going to do that? And we'll go through the basics of setting it up. So really that you and I can have this conversation, and when we're all done, you can take that knowledge and go forth and actually do something with it. Remember that little trial thing that we had? Okay. So go ahead and do your own VM, and that way you can take the information out of here and successfully deploy something like that on your own and be able to best support your company and best support your users for handling the application. So welcome to F5. You know, basically, that's the easiest place to say about where we're getting started in here. We talked a little bit about the certs. We talked a little bit about the deployment as far as, I guess, getting our ADC in general. And we certainly talked about the trial, which is the best way to get our hands on stuff. So I expect that by now you've gone out and at least looked at that, downloaded it. We'll talk about licenses and stuff like that as we go through the different nuggets. So we'll get all of the things that we need in here to help you deploy and maintain. And with that, of course, if you get a certification, really should be an added bonus, but that's kind of the kind of thing that we look at, is it is on the roadmap for it, but it is not the end goal of doing all these classes in here. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.